Time for an install video. Bravo Snorkel out of Spain sent me this snorkel to install on the Gladiator because I wanted one. I wanted to see what it was like, and I didn't like anything that we had available here, so let's go over the install and talk about its performance. So it makes sense when you're installing this that the bracket goes in between because it lines up with the holes, and then your factory bolts. Factory bolts go down and hold it in. Once we figured that out, we can put the bracket on the snorkel itself to install it onto the Gladiator. Once you have this installed, you line it up where it goes. After you take that cover off, bolt it in with the factory hardware. We got the snorkel installed. I wanted to see how it looked. It looks great. I'm using the Snorkel Upgrade Cyclone, but you can use the Bravo head as well. I use the Bravo head in the summertime. I use the other one in the wintertime because we get a lot of snow and sleet up here. It does work with both. The installation was pretty straightforward. There's a few tricky parts coming up I'll talk about, but basically pull the factory airbox out, and you'll see here in a little bit, once you get this airbox off, you pull, there's a side, that air inlet that you see by my left hand, unbolt that, you pull that off, and then you're going to replace it with their inlet for that box. I want to take a moment to let everybody know that this is the first Jeep that I've really owned and done anything to, so I'm learning as I go. That's why I'm taking my time, trying not to mess anything up, because long-time Toyota guy, this is all new territory for me. Now with the airbox removed, you're going to take the factory air intake part off, the part that sits on the top of the fender there, brings in fresh air from the outside. That just pries off with a screwdriver, a couple clips, nothing too crazy. We're gonna speed this up again though because I didn't want to break anything, so I was going very slow and being overly cautious. So the new intake, well, I guess it's the attachment that goes on this airbox, the factory lower airbox that you hook the snorkel up to, as you'll see in a few minutes here. It's a pretty loose fit. So I used FIPIG, which at Toyota we call it FIPIG. It's fix and place guide. It's RTV basically. Made a pretty good seal around there, sealed everything up, wanted to make it fit tight and keep it as sealed as possible. I wanted to point out that again, the instructions aren't very clear, so you kind of got to figure this out. There's this little side bracket that you put on here. I Loctited this just because I don't want it to come loose. Put this little L bracket on using the provided hardware, and then spin it around so that the big hole's on the top, and that's what's going to secure this to the fender when you get it installed. I'm going to show the installation of the snorkel tube itself, which was honestly a pain in the ass. I'm using the fender as a table, and you'll see the instructions here in a few minutes. And I gotta tell you, they're not very helpful. There's two brackets, Z-type brackets that go on the bottom of this, and originally my logic didn't work, and I had the brackets reversed, so I had to flip them around here. And after the install, you'll see they're a big pain in the ass to get installed on the Jeep. Once you install them here, you need a really flat 10mm open end box wrench to get these done the way they need to be done. And man, it was just, this was the hardest part of the installation right here. This was the biggest pain in my ass. Well, now that we've got that ready to go, you slide it into the body of the snorkel, and you'll see what little room you really have to work here. If you have big hands or big fingers, forget about it. It sucks. Really super easy to cross thread those bolts when you get down to it. They're 10mm bolts, nothing too fancy, but once you get it set in the snorkel body, everything should line up. And then you'll see me struggle. You got to get them set, and then you got to use your fingers and just kind of mess with it. I tried a ratcheting box wrench and realized quickly it doesn't fit, so that was pretty freaking stupid. Ended up getting just an open-end box wrench and very slowly and meticulously doing this install so that we didn't cross thread those bolts into the fender, into the body where it holds the fender, because that would obviously suck. Again, this took the longest time, and the instructions again weren't super clear. I guess that's my only complaint. I love this snorkel. I love the way it looks. I love the way it lays into the hood. It makes everything great. I mean, I went with this because I didn't like the AmFib look. The square to the rectangle to the oval to the... I just didn't like it. It's not very uniform, and I didn't want to cut the hood. I've cut holes in fenders for snorkels before on my Toyotas, but I really didn't want to cut the hood on this thing if I didn't have to. And that's why I ended up finding this snorkel, and I've had it on for a couple of months now, and I really like it. It performs well, looks good. I get a lot of questions about it because it's the only Gladiator, to my knowledge, in the US that has this snorkel. I might be wrong, but I've looked and not seen any others. So you see the 10mm action here, and it is just sucking to do, but it's not too bad once it's done. So now that that's secure, I was kind of uncertain about the inlet for this snorkel. If you look at it, there's not a lot of room there, right? So I wasn't sure if the silicone pieces were going to fit properly. If you're anything like me, you need to make sure that your hose clamps, your worm clamps there, face the same direction. Screws have to be facing the right direction and the same direction, otherwise it's a bad install. Now that we've got that situated, we want to get the factory lower box that has the snorkel pipe, let's call it, in there. Get that lined up and ready to go. You see that L bracket that we put on before that lines up with that hole there, and that's also a 10mm, I believe. And now it's a matter of just plugging everything in, making everything fit. On the bottom of the factory airbox, there's these little rubber kind of things you just got to push down, and it takes a bit of force to get them in there. You can shoot some lube in there, but I'm frankly just an idiot and like to force stuff in places it shouldn't be. Well, that didn't sound good, but anyways, you get my point. Put some penetrating oil or some WD-40 on there. It'll probably fit a hell of a lot easier instead of just using brute force and raging out. But make everything fit nice and snug, put everything together, and the rest of it's a breeze. And it's just tightening down the worm clamps and putting the air filter with the lid back on. And yeah, see, I go back with the drill because I should have just lubed it up and it has slipped right in. But oh well, shit happens. Rest of the install is a piece of cake, so stay tuned for the end result. Okay, as we get that filter lid put back in, get some things tidied up and everything, we're getting ready to make sure everything's good, and then tidy it up, start it up, take it for a drive, and see what it does. This is our installed product. It attaches to the box, goes back into our cowl, into the snorkel, and up top. Well, it definitely makes snorkeling noises now. I really do love the way the snorkel looks. The install was a bit tricky, but we got it figured out, and I wouldn't have it any other way. This was a great snorkel, great product. They gifted this to me, and I wanted to do an install video for a while now and just let you guys know a couple of things. One, their factory head is amazing. There's no water ingress into the box. The way that it's engineered, even in a heavy downpour, doesn't matter. Again, in the winter time, we get a lot of snow and sleet here in Ohio, so I'm running the Cyclone upgrade from Snorkel upgrade. It's a great product too. I wasn't sure that it was going to work with the snorkel, but it does, and it keeps 99% of everything else out, so it helps out a lot in the winter. Spring, summer, fall, I run the Bravo head, and it's a great product. I really like it. Again, I chose it, I wanted it because I didn't like the AmFib one for $785 whatever dollars that was. I also wasn't a huge fan of the, I believe it's AEV makes one, great looking product, but again, I didn't want to cut through the hood. I didn't want this to turn into a project where I chop everything up, so I was looking for alternatives and trying to figure out what I liked, what I wanted, and came across this. Talked to the guys over at Bravo, and as I stated, they're based out of Spain, and the design, the engineering behind this product, I think is really fantastic. They did send this to me as a sponsored item, and I think that's really generous of them. And I gotta tell you guys, if you want a good snorkel for the Gladiator, doesn't work with the Mojave. For some reason, the Mojave is different. I don't know. Again, learning Jeep, but I would say give it a try. It's 399 euros, roughly about $500 US with the shipping, and it took about 7 to 8 days to get here, which overseas wasn't that bad. So really great product. Give them a try. Thanks.